If you don't start your mornings at 5 a.m. with a cold plunge, a half marathon, followed by a meditation directly after a double bodyweight squat, then you're a piece of trash who isn't worthy of success. At least that's what a lot of the productivity culture makes it seem like, and obviously that's nonsense. You guys know that I'm a huge self-development nerd and I love focusing on my fitness, my academics, and all that jazz, but some things I've been seeing look like it's taking it a little too far, and I know I'm not the only one that thinks this. So let's talk about optimization. Optimizing your workflow for anything is objectively a good way to maximize what you get, your return from your inputs. That may be good with running systems and businesses. Problem lies with over-optimizing yourself and treating yourself like a system or a business. And that's one of the major toxic paradigms that the culture of over-optimizing promotes, right? It treats humans like machines, but humans aren't machines. And it's no knock on other creators, but if your answer to become more productive is just treating yourself like a robot, I don't know if I trust you as an authority on the matter. An example of this is in the fitness world. It's the difference between a coach that caters a program specific to your goals, needs, and limitations compared to someone who sells you a pre-made cookie-cutter workout program. That's similar to what I've been guilty of when I try to optimize my own workflow. I used to read or hear compelling advice and blindly apply it to my life without the self-reflection and the nuance that comes with self-development, which is actually the hard part. If you treat yourself like a robot, you're diminishing a lot of the aspects that make you you. The way you tick, the way you think, what inspires you, your creativity, all that kind of goes away. And on top of that, you might be sucking out a lot of the joy on your journey. And that's going to lead to roadblocks. That's going to lead to actually having less productivity and less progress in the long run. And it's going to lead to burnout. One of the major goals that I set for myself this year was to approach medical school, approach fitness, and approach social media with a long end game perspective, right? Really maximizing my sustainability to maximize what I can produce in the long run. And this was inspired by a quote that I heard and absolutely fell in love with. The man who loves walking will walk further than the man who loves the destination. Best practices and optimized workflows are very efficient and they can get you a lot of results, but you might be making the process and the journey a bit stale and unsustainable. Spaced repetition through flashcard programs like Anki are widely considered to be an optimized approach to studying in medical school, but I know friends who continuously crush it who don't use the program because they hate using flashcards. The optimal lifting community oftentimes considers deadlifting and flat barbell bench presses no good because you can swap them for more optimal movements. In both of these situations, you're focused on the destination and not on the human psyche, and the human psyche is the motor that lets you go on that journey. Suboptimal or not, I enjoy benching and deadlifting, so I'm going to do it. Even if I'm leaving a bit on the table, it's going to be made up for the fact that I actually enjoy pushing myself more on those workouts and actually look forward to doing them. The man who loves walking will walk further than the man who loves the destination. This is something that I used to struggle with, and sometimes I still struggle with it, especially with this YouTube account and my new Instagram account that I'm trying to grow, right? You hear a lot of creators that are bigger telling you about all these best practices, what kind of videos to make, how long they should be, what information you should provide to your audience. And a lot of it can get really overwhelming and a lot of it kind of dulls the process for me. I want this channel to grow and I want my Instagram page to grow, but whenever I dwell on these best practices, sometimes I just don't even feel like making anything anymore. That's why I've been leaning towards making videos and content that I do want to make. That way, it won't burn me out. I can actually enjoy the process and I can get excited about making these videos and the content for you guys, and hopefully the right people find it. And this is actually something that bugs me a little bit about medical students giving advice to each other. Everyone always talks about, oh, just use a third-party resource, skip lectures, blast 500 Anki cards every single day, and you'll be fine. Now, the people that are sharing this advice, they're coming from a good place, and a lot of what they're saying is well-informed to an extent, but people don't always learn the same way that you do. Some people like going to lectures. Some people don't learn from doing hundreds and hundreds of flashcards, right? You can do spaced repetitions in a different kind of way. So I do utilize Anki. I do utilize third-party resources outside of my school's lectures. I think most people do. And I don't claim to be perfect. It's probably suboptimal, but it works for me. And I don't want to act all high and mighty about there's only one way to study, right? Now, keeping it real, I know that you can't actually capitalize on your potential if you're not utilizing some kind of optimized system, if you're not using some kind of best practice, right? I'm not delusional enough to think that I can feel good my way through everything. Finding a balance is something that I've been striving for a very long time, and I'm still looking for a balance because every phase in life and every few months, it requires a different kind of balance and a different kind of commitment towards what you're doing. Maybe you're not the type of person who can go through 500 Anki hockey flashcards every day. That's fine because a lot of people aren't. But passively reading and going over notes has shown to yield worse results than actively studying, so maybe you should look into doing practice questions. Avoiding over-optimization doesn't mean that you're avoiding doing hard things, right? It means that you're finding different ways to do those hard things that can actually be consistent for you, that way you'll actually stick with it. When we design our to-do list, our workflows, and our calendars, right, we look at the only resource that we have to put into this calendar, this to-do list, is our time, but we never really consider mental fatigue. A lot of the optimized practices come from studies that apply to generalized sets of individuals, but the problem is, just because it applies to a general set of individuals doesn't mean that it can be recreated through every single individual, right? Because you're not a set of numbers, you are an individual. By just applying the generalized best practices to your workflow without the nuance of who you are as a person, you're ignoring what makes you tick, you're ignoring your motivations, you're ignoring how you work best. In the long run, that's going to be detrimental. The driving force of an overly optimized system requires for your input to be perfection. This leads to inevitable burnout and puts you in a position where you wonder what's wrong with you for not being able to keep up. There's going to be some days where you aren't as mentally there as others, days where your lifts don't go as well. That's normal. And yes, discipline is the ability to do something even though you don't feel like it. I know that, you know that, we've all heard it before, right? But if you're coming up with a system for yourself that depends solely on discipline, I don't know if it's a system that's actually worthwhile. Build your discipline muscle. Absolutely, that's so important for every aspect of life, right? But don't put yourself in situations where you have to constantly rely on it. And here's an example. Let's say you're on a strict diet for a bodybuilding show, powerlifting meet, whatever. Instead of having a fridge full of cake and ice cream while depending on discipline to not reach in and eat some, just don't put yourself in that situation. Similarly, don't implement a hyper-optimized system for yourself that requires you to have absolute discipline and perfection, because that's probably not going to work, right? Instead, use a system that's more realistic, more catered to you, that way you can actually stick to it. And I know it's a struggle, guys. For myself personally, I've tried to do all the productivity things on YouTube. I was like, wow, this is going to help me be so productive, but ultimately it ended up with me not being able to keep up with it. And then I was wondering, you know, what was wrong with me? Why am I not capable of doing this? Like, I just felt like such a bad person. But in reality, I was just setting myself up for failure. And when you set yourself up for failure, you're not going to want to keep going, right? Instead, set yourself up for success. That way you actually feel good about it, and then you can keep on leveling up at each level. So I have a love-hate relationship with self-development advice because of the over-optimizing, over-emphasis on treating yourself like a robot, treating yourself like you're perfect. And for me, I don't think that really works. I know for a lot of other people that doesn't really work. So this is your message that, you know, you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to utilize those systems in order to be productive, right? Productivity shouldn't come at the cost of your mental health. And on top of that, I would argue that optimized workflows and best practices that ignore the nuance of who you are, and if you don't cater it to yourself, you're actually performing suboptimally because you're not letting yourself tap into who you are and your full potential, right? So in that way, you're actually being less productive. And that's not because there's anything wrong with you. It's not because there's something wrong with me. It's just that we're not robots. Optimized approaches work best for you guys. More power to you. There's nothing wrong with it if it's not, you know, weighing you down and ruining your life. For me and a lot of other people I know, over-optimizing will actually do a lot more damage than good. And I'm not saying that optimizing your systems is a bad thing, not at all. Best practices and optimization is very important to get the most out of your time. All I'm saying is strike a balance and find a way to do it without ruining your mental health and ruining your life. Have you guys ever fell into the same pitfalls that I fell into? How did you get out of them? I'd love to hear about it, so leave a comment down below and I'll see you guys on the next video.